The Lion King is likely the most beloved Disney animated movie, and for me personally, a very formative movie when I first saw it on VHS as a little kid. It came out before either of us were born, though, in 1994, and has since then been treated to a few direct-to-DVD sequels, a very commercially successful CGI remake that lacked soul, and a long-running musical on the stage that first got performed in 1997. Welcome to Quiet on Set, to a Roll That Again review where we revisit older films and see how they hold up for us personally, but also in the collective zeitgeist. I'm Ewan Graf, and I'm joined by Connor Brandenburg. Connor, I think it's safe to say that this feline adaptation of Hamlet has stood the test of time on its 30-year anniversary, right?
Right. I mean, I feel like it's impossible to overstate or understate how important this movie is, not only for film and for musical film, but also animation, of course. The
Yeah.
behind-the-scenes documentaries that were put into all these VHS releases and these DVD releases and even Blu-ray releases now. But seeing all of the artistry and passion put into the work, even behind the scenes with these featurettes that were released, it was insane to me as a child seeing it. There's one specific feature I remember very distinctly that we might talk about later, particularly the scene where the wild beast horde like just rushes through the valley right underneath Mufasa. I remember seeing a lot of like behind the scenes stuff for the 3D animation for that scene and how revolutionary it was, especially seeing all of the behind the scenes struggle with Disney focusing more on Pocahontas as like an Academy Awards hit rather than this film, which they saw more as a passion project for their team. So they put so much more effort into the former and left the latter, which ironically became one of the most successful films for Disney. And just seeing how how much of kind of a failure Pocahontas was, both on a critical and budget and like every kind of level imaginable, that movie was a failure. Seeing the differences, it's kind of insane. But obviously, we're talking about Lion King. I just was gonna ask also, what'd you think about the music? 'Cause I feel like it's been a minute since I've seen this movie, and so that was one of the things
Yeah.
where I wanted to see how this movie like aged.
I think this is the part that aged the best about it. I also like the look. I think the performances are all really good. The thing I really appreciated about this film is there's no fluff. This movie is 82 minutes long. Maybe that comes as a part of it being a lesser focused on film for Disney. That they're like, yeah, no, this is 82 minutes of film. I think it's 89 minutes with the credits and all. And there's 5 songs in it. Maybe a little bit, like a little bit that they do with Timon and Pumbaa. Other than that, I think, there's a reason why 3 of these ended up being Oscar nominated, which is crazy. And one of them ended up winning, of course, the one that Elton John was attached to with Can You Feel the Love Tonight. His version is also incredible. I love the version from the actual movie. Like, that's the one that I keep replaying the most, but also The Circle of Life and Hakuna Matata got like nominated, and I think those are probably the most iconic. Also, I Just Can't Wait to Be King and Be Prepared are both just really, really good songs. They just work in the concept of getting the story along. It's not like it's a break. There's always a thematic reason as to why we break out into song. The emphasis on the cartoonish parts of it, I think it kind of keeps it grounded in a way where it's not like too over the top as maybe some other animated movies are, with like the amount of violence, and like it's still grounded within the animal kingdom, but obviously being over the top, especially when you compare it to the remake, and then you can see where like you have none of that in there anymore. But long story short, I really love the songs. Do you have like a standout favorite, or do you also think it's like consistently really, really good across the board with what they composed here?
I think it's really, really good across the board. I really love Can You Feel the Love Tonight? Obviously, the Elton John version is really
Yeah.
amazing. Circle of Life is one I've like listened to so much growing up. I feel like that song specifically was like really, really, really like one of the most catchy songs in the movie. Like not in terms of like the chorus or anything like that, because I feel like Hakuna Matata was the most fun. Like every single time I heard it, like as a kid, I just immediately had to like in my head run through the entire track. It was like, and all the images were so iconic that like I couldn't think about the song with the images and vice versa. Be Prepared is my second favorite. I really love that one. That song and Scar's animation is like really, really strong. I feel like the character animation is like really incredible in this movie specifically, because looking back at all of Disney's older 2D animated films, The character animation's always been great. I think one of my favorite movies in their catalog for that is Lilo and Stitch. I think that one has really, really great character animation. But this one, I feel like, is a testament to the passion of Disney at the time and all the people involved, because you cannot compare this to the new one and see like the lack of emotion on these animals' faces and be like, yeah, I feel the same feelings that I'm getting from the new one as I get from the old one. Because when you look at the old one, when Mufasa dies, it's like it's so heartbreaking and tragic because not only the voice acting is better, but also when you look at Simba's face and you see like how just grief stricken he is, it's just
Hmm.
it's undeniable how much better this movie is in that realm. I feel like this movie is so powerful in terms of its
Yeah.
look and animation that its music only benefits from the character and sheer emotion that's displayed in like all of the facial animation, stuff like that.
Yeah. No, I love how I Just Can't Wait to Be King and Hakuna Matata, if you look at them structurally, I think they're pretty similarish in this like laid back approach to life, with one of them happening early on, I Just Can't Wait to Be King, which spawns out of naivete, and then the Hakuna Matata is a kind of forced coping mechanism, but all comes back to a kid that just wants to be a kid. And then he grows up with that sort of stunted mentality, never progresses to I guess seeing his own responsibilities for what he's grown into. And I think to me, where this movie really truly shines and brought me to tears multiple times on this rewatch was that it just kind of is beautifully paraphrasing for you in really direct but also in allegories, like these life lessons that are incredibly valuable to a kid who watches it, which we can get to our personal experiences with this because I got a whole bunch of story to tell there. But also, as an adult, you kind of see that kind of growing up, that and then obviously takes you back to your own experiences. But there's a lot of like early stuff with Mufasa. It just kind of hits, and I didn't remember this movie really getting to the point as much as it does, because that could feel like it's just like dropping exposition on you and then without any like fluff, just getting straight into like the big moments. Like I didn't remember that the way that we go to like the like as far as the light can see, that's all ours, right? That kind of scene that you're just like, oh, we're in that scene. And I was like, oh, isn't there like a bit of lead up to just like talking a bit? No, it's like you're right in there. And love that movie feels that way. It then, through the type of animation that it does, gives you so much depth in an animal's face, that I just wasn't really ready with. I knew I had this movie as like a 5 star. This is incredible, like one of my favorite films of all time. I didn't expect it to hold up again. But watching it like whatever, I don't know how many times I've seen this film, but yeah, it just kind of held up in that way, and I found that kind of beautiful because maybe that's something that I don't expect to happen anymore. And we're gonna talk in a separate video about the remake, but even that just being longer and not really much else happening, but everything is just prolonged and not getting to the point for what reason. And that just feels also another like really child friendly thing. A kid who doesn't want to sit down for 100 minutes. If it's an hour 20, that's just about right. It just all comes together. I think this is one of the best animated films, and one of the best family films as well, ever made.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I feel like the legacy of this movie has been so iconic and important that, like I was saying earlier, it's kind of hard to understate how important it is, not only for like I said, for film, for animation, but for like kids, just for like life lessons, stuff like that. I feel like
Yeah.
I've never seen a movie like this address like grief and like death and like failure and just all these different concepts that a kid probably will have to face. I mean, whether or not they're older or younger at the time that they, have to face them. I feel like it's pretty important for them to have to confront and like either just think about them or discuss them with like their parents, stuff like that. And the movie does it in a way where it's not condescending or it's not like looking down on kids as if like they need to be like
Yeah.
talked to a certain way. Like it's very mature, but in a way where it's like kids can understand what these characters are talking about or what Simba is feeling at a certain moment. They can totally relate. Also, I feel like the transition from Simba being a child to being like a young adult is really
Hmm.
well articulated, especially in the performances as well. I really do appreciate how like despite how much more time we get, well, actually, I don't even know. I think it might be split. I can't remember exactly how many minutes they get, but like I feel like I remember more of the movie from the younger version of Simba than the older version. Despite that, I feel like Simba becomes like such a complete character that kids are able to like project themselves onto an older version of what they
Yeah.
kind of projected themselves already onto like a younger version of Simba. So it's them able to like kind of mature alongside this character, and I think that's kind of beautiful, especially considering a lot of animated movies are so dependent on like really like tight small like periods of time where it's like this one character that kind of stays the same age or maturity and either learns something or what have you. But with this movie, it's like showing you like almost like an entire young adult life. Like it's giving you a lot of thematic material for a kid to basically like just, I don't want to say the word consume, but to like involve themselves in for only 80 minutes. Like I agree with you that the
Yeah.
length of this movie and how tight it is like a testament to how just pretty much perfect this movie is. I feel like this movie does what it sets out to do. It's so much more than an adaptation of Hamlet. I know we mentioned that earlier. Shakespeare is
Yeah.
such an iconic playwright that like when you think of his work, especially like Hamlet, you already know what a movie adaptation would be like. So it's like when you go into it, you're already expecting a certain thing. But the way this movie goes about it, and specifically the writing with like between characters, the interpersonal relationships, develop the concepts of Shakespeare's material so much more than what it could have been. And so maybe that's
Hmm.
why I think Disney probably looked down on this adaptation of it whenever it was being produced, because they thought that if it's a production of Hamlet for kids, I imagine that they would be like, why would kids be interested in that? But also, I don't understand why they would be thinking the opposite for Pocahontas. I don't know. They would think that would be successful
Yeah.
with kids.
I mean, Hamlet gets brought up a lot in like obviously as the groundwork for this movie. I don't think you feel that much of Hamlet of the actual story in the final product because it's so much more about those growth moments for a kid when the other one was more about like a pretty tip like obviously a really good story, but like a pretty typical story about aristocracy and that kind of betrayal on and like getting to the throne. When I think that to me is the weakest part of the Lion King.
Hmm.
Like for me, the ending of this film is the weakest part of it. Maybe because that is also part due to my personal connection to the film. And I don't know if you have like a first memory with this. I think I've seen the film when I was really small, really a young kid. But the part of it that I remember the most was seeing it around age 9 to 10, seeing it for the first time shortly after my dad passed away, and then having that obviously like that as a kid, not understanding that concept, struggling to get your emotions in order when they're so in disarray of something that you don't understand, and then a movie kind of neatly putting together that like all of this just doesn't make sense. You want to distract yourself from the realities of life, and then getting to the point of seeing that reflection of your parent in yourself.
You see, he lives in you.
And to me, that is the most beautiful movie, the most beautiful moment in the movie. And I distinctly remember as a 9 or 10 year old tearing up to that. And it was like one of the catalysts. I think for me to be such an emotional person, when I watch films, like even in lesser films, a lot of stuff actually moves me to tears. And I think it kind of comes back to this, like that sort of understanding of seeing that sort of reflection early on in media of something that like was to me really important at the time. And yeah, I just think it's beautiful for that, and I can attest from personal experience that like yes, for kids this can be a really formative film.
Mm.
And yeah, I will forever be grateful for that, even though Disney is like now destroying its legacy.
Yeah,
But
quite a bit.
yeah.
But I wouldn't say that I have like that much of a like of a personal attachment to this movie. I have like at when I watched it when I was a kid, I didn't haven't undergone like any particular like moment of grief or traumatic experience that would have led me to kind of like trauma bond with this movie.
Yeah.
But and I don't mean that in a rude way at all.
No, I mean that to like that is we all have unique experiences. I think my first film going experience is like in an open air theater seeing Finding Nemo. It
Mhm.
probably wasn't the first film I saw. It's just the one that is like inked in my mind. And for this one, I remembered seeing it post, I guess, having experienced that. And yeah, it just kind of stays with you. I think the
Yeah.
movie itself, from your experiences and how you talk about it as well, like it doesn't need that sort of connection.
No, for sure.
Obviously,
And I'm not
you don't need
yeah.
trauma to experience it at all. And it still holds a lot of like actual valuable like lessons in there while being like incredibly entertaining.
Right.
I think that's just kind of the magic of good animation.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, like, obviously, like, your experience is a testament to how powerful this film is and how passionate the writers were for this film and the fact that, like, they were able to make a project that was so ambitious, but also so humanistic and so dependent on these emotions and, like,
Mm.
able to, like, you can kind of tell that a lot of people that were involved in this project had dealt with a lot of grief or a lot of this kind of trauma. And so, like, it makes sense that the product of all of these emotions would have been this resonant. For me, I feel like I can't remember if this was one of the first movies I had watched in a theater because I think at the time when I first watched it, they did a 3D re-release of it. This is back when 3D was like
Yeah.
first coming out in like 2007 or 8 or something. I didn't watch it when I was
Yeah.
too young. I think I first watched it when I was like 6 or 7, I think, and I have no recollection if I've seen it before that point. But I do remember being so like blown away by it as a kid and it like being able to convey so many mature ideas to me. And I really respected as a kid. I mean, maybe respect is the wrong word, but I really appreciated that like the movie wasn't talking down to me as if I was deserving
Yeah.
of any less like if any less like maturity or intelligence or respect. I really appreciate the fact that this movie is like very respectful and understanding of kids. Like, despite the fact
Yeah,
that the
yeah.
movie moves on from Simba being a kid into him being a young adult, it still like shows him struggling with what he's repressed as a kid. All that trauma he repressed as a kid and didn't want to think about. It still like shows that inner child that he still has. And I
Exactly.
it's so powerful.
I mean, you don't age in that moment while you're watching it as you are a kid, but you see him progress and kind of see him be affected by it or like keeping it completely separate from him. But in the time we take, it really is a short while. But then when we have that moment with Rafiki where he goes like, the past can hurt, and then you learn from it, and you not you learn from it, but you also move past it. It's a simplified version of like it's not like you can avoid the pain and then you grow past it, but it's such an nice little allegory that you'll learn from your past experiences to be able to like sustain that. And it's a sort of like just growth and kind of understanding that and making it that's hard to, I think that's really hard to bring across. But I was really struck by how easily it conveyed that sort of idea to kids, and it kind of took me by surprise on the rewatch again, because it's cheesy.
Yeah.
It's really cheesy, that moment, but it works, and a lot of these moments kind of work. Anything else that we wanted to touch on with it?
I mean, we could talk about like how because I mean we talked about the voice acting a little bit earlier
Yes.
and how like really
Oh.
fantastic the performances are. I mean,
James Earl
obviously,
Jones,
yeah,
my God.
he's incredible in this movie. I feel like he definitely delivers one of the all-time voice acting performances in this movie. And I mean, everyone knows it, but
Yeah, I felt like my whole body shuddered. Like,
yeah,
like I
when-
was just like I was vibrating.
I watched
when
this.
he was talking.
This watch was my first headphones watch for Lion King.
Yeah.
And whenever he just started talking, like it felt like a little bit like ASMR a little bit because of how close he is to the mic most of the time. But like he's such a powerful voice. Like this and I rewatched it recently, but I forgot to log it like always. Candyman, Tony Todd, these two performers, I don't know like how, but what they're able to do with their like really deep, like powerful voices is so incredible. And like I don't know why I'm like connecting Candyman to Mufasa, but like I don't know, these kind of performances really resonate for me. And when I hear such powerful voices, it's like, that's a voice you're never going to hear again, ever. Like, James Earl Jones was a once in
Yeah.
a lifetime performer, and he'll never be replicated. I mean, even we're going to talk about it in the future, but even in that Lion King remake, they try to get him to do it again, and you obviously can tell he
Yeah.
is like out. He is not able to do it as well as he wasn't before. Like, it's just, you can't force that kind of performance out of someone. But I don't know. How do you feel about him as well as the other performers? Because I mean, like, there's a lot of other good performances in this movie too.
A rare thing for me, I'm going to praise the kid performance. I think that one's really strong. Especially stands out when you compare it to the remake, because there I think it's horrible. But everyone is in that one. Not gonna, but we'll get into that a bit more in that separate video. But I think everyone kind of works really well in this. The one that stands out the most to me is Matthew Broderick, but I think he's also really good. To see Rowan Atkinson as Zazu in a different kind of register, where it's not the Mr. Bean thing that, like, I feel like he hasn't really done much beyond that to stay in the zeitgeist now. I think he's kind of seen as that. But here, yeah, it's not John Oliver. That's all I'll say. But James Earl Jones feels like it's a warm blanket that gives you comfort, which, like, I think further illustrates how much of a tragic moment it is when Mufasa dies in the film. That, like, he's gone now. That sort of like, that is all taken away from you, and I think it's just his presence is definitely like something that you'll notice is missing. And I mean, you bring up Candyman with Tony Todd, both of them, and James Earl Jones, rest in peace to both of them. They recently, in the last few months, passed away, and just incredible talents that yeah, you can go back to, and their body of work is super impressive. But then obviously Jeremy Irons is another person who really stands out, and you can see in those type of voice booth recordings when he was recording, he had a great time of it, and you can feel it. And I think Scar is often, as a character, definitely the standout, because Simba is such a surrogate for us as an audience, and I think he's not that interesting of a character overall. More what happens to him is the interesting stuff. Over Scar, especially his performance, is interesting. I think his character itself, like what he does on a plot level, I think this movie is kind of pretty bland and boring, but it thematically has so much going for it that is obviously enriched by great music, the look, and incredible voice performances. But I mean, Be Prepared is your second favorite, so I assume Jeremy Irons is really high up on your list when it comes to the performances in this one.
No, yeah, Jeremy Irons is really incredible in this. I think particularly the way that, and I was mentioning this earlier with the facial animation, the way that they animate his voice acting, and alongside his voice acting, they're very, like, the chemistry between the voice acting and the animation is so incredible. I love how they didn't, like, a lot of some especially some like Japanese anime productions, they love to sort of animate before the voice acting is done, and so, like, you can tell whenever a voice actor is putting a lot into a performance that doesn't really look like the same. It doesn't look like they were like produced at the same time. Whereas, like, the Lion King, especially with Jeremy Irons' performance specifically, it looks so perfect. Like, every single little, like, growl or whatever, like the deep, like, gravelly voice he has, every single like noise he makes, like, perfectly is paired with some kind of facial animation or little quirk that he does. Even in Be Prepared, that entire sequence with him is so incredible, and I just think he's really, really great in this. I think it's kind of crazy that, like, they try in the remake, they tried to, like, replace him. We'll talk about that later, but, like, replace him with someone else when he's like, he still could do it, considering, like, how, like, he still has the voice, he still has the vocal cords for that thing. But I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw that behind the scene. I just before we recorded today, I watched a couple behind the scenes recordings of, especially of, like, the interviews with the cast, and they basically showed them, like, what they got so far, what they're working with, and then before they went to animate, like you said, it was like kind of a parallel process of animation and getting the voice recordings in. So a lot of it was also inspired by him, and he specifically, he points out that, like, that's not what he expected. That like, how much of it is not just him being inspired by a character and getting into it, but the character that they're crafting being inspired by him. And you can really feel that there was a lot of attention to detail being paid, and we're not just getting a tech demo of what a natural geographic could look like.
But it's like also connecting these two elements of filmmaking with animation that you don't see a lot in behind the scenes stuff. Like there isn't just a random studio like that's being outsourced in like some random area of the world that like is animating, like they don't even know who's voice acting for these characters, but like these animators are actively working with these voice actors to make sure they can craft a character from like the script that they have, but they're still like building upon that character. Like that character isn't set in stone. Like whenever Jeremy Irons went into that recording booth, that character was not set in stone to be a certain way. Like they were making that character as like alongside him, and I really appreciate that aspect of this movie, like with every character, honestly.
And then I mean, one of the reasons why it did spawn that sequel, I got a couple of sequels that I have not seen that were direct to DVD. I think there was like The Lion King 1.5, and the movie ends with Nala and Simba having a kid as well, to like emphasize that circle of life in a way for them specifically. What to me was always like kind of funny is that like they are the only male lions, and there's a bunch of lioness like around there. But for me, Thirda is a point at like you see this aristocracy, like he needs to be the king and like whatever. But there's not really a lot of other options anywhere out there. Like it's their little, if you could even call it a herd. They're so small group of lions, and that is the whole world, and that has an effect because they hold the power on so many other things. And obviously we're then not really I think getting like a depiction of like the real world here with like the food chain and all of that. Like it's more a representation of the real world, like an allegory for those type of things. So like in our small like families, how we have ripple effects on everything around us. So to me, that like what I just thought there were more lions there, and that it wasn't just all like women.
Yeah,
this movie did. Yeah, sorry.
No, sorry, I didn't realize that either. I feel like a lot of the time with these kind of movies, like there's certain things that I notice, like like growing up especially, like I didn't even think about that. That's not something I noticed.
Yeah, and I mean, this movie was incredibly successful. If you adjusted to inflate, like it was one of the films that in 1994 almost grossed $1 billion, which is that is
That's insane.
so impressive. And obviously, like the sequel, and sorry, not the sequel, the remake ended up making like 1.6 or 1.7 billion dollars. If you adjust that to like inflate it now from 2019, it's already past 2 billion. But if you adjust the original from 1994, because I think there's an inflation of like 117 or 107% since then, crazy, it would be slightly ahead with 2.1 billion. And that's just like, I always looked at that and was like, why would it? Obviously there was a legacy of the previous one, which like Frozen 2 did better than Frozen 1, even though it's a lesser thing that often happens. That's one of the reasons why Disney keeps doing this with a lot of their properties. But to me, it was a refreshing kind of stat to find out that, well, actually, if you look at it, the original did gross more. Like there was obviously like more people seeking it out, and it was a bigger thing. Even if the numbers would indicate something else. And that, I don't know. It's just money. Who cares? But it was like, yes, value. Seek out the better thing. And please, for the love of God, for the love of Mufasa in heaven. Yeah, if you have the option between the two of what you watch, obviously, go for the animated one. And to me, it is a pretty perfect movie, although I don't love parts of the ending. As it comes together, it's one of my favorite films of all time, and I'll give it that perfect 5 out of 5 rating. Yeah, from my side.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that it's like one of my favorite movies of all time. I think rewatching it again definitely reminded me of how amazing it was, or amazing it is. I think I'm gonna go with like a 9 out of 10. I think it's like really great, amazing. I think there are other Disney, especially that classic era of Disney, that I like more. There's other movies I like more, but this one definitely is in the top 3, of course. I think it's incredible. I think if you haven't seen it, there's still some people that I know that haven't seen it. And I'm begging them, for the love of God, like you said, don't see the remake over this. Like, it will maybe not will
Well, no, you
ruin.
should start with Mufasa.
Oh my god.
Because that's a prequel. We haven't seen it, by the way, yet.
No.
But yeah.
But oh my god. But I have some friends that saw the remake before this, and that told me that they liked the remake, and I'm like, it makes my head
I mean,
hurt.
for a lot of people, it would have been the same for Aladdin, for
Yeah.
obviously like the Little Mermaid, and Seven Little Dwarfs. You know, one of the, if not the earliest from Disney, right? That
Mhm.
was like the first they did in 37 or something like that. And yeah, a lot of people will watch that next year, and it will be their first experience with it. But go seek out those originals. There's a reason why hand-drawn animation is something that we nowadays crave when there's so much CGI slop. I think we're going to close it out on this. Obviously, tell us about your experiences with the film. And if you want to vent about the remake, we'll have a separate video for that. That should be linked in the description of this one as well. And yeah, thanks so much, Connor, for coming on. You can find his socials as well as mine linked below. And Hakuna Matata.
See you guys.